Hi there. Welcome to Prices at the Pumps, our weekly look at all things energy related. I'm Scott Squires, pleased to be joined by Dan McTagg right here on SaltWire. And Dan, we'll get to where you are currently as you look to be on the side of the road in your vehicle. But first things first, it's Thursday. Newfoundland and Labrador adjusted their prices today. What happened there? And then what can you tell us about what consumers can expect tomorrow in the rest of Atlantic Canada?
Well, it looks like the PUB, the regulators in Newfoundland, decided to wet the old finger and test the winds, and decided that yesterday and today would be a perfect day to add the summer blend gasoline pricing. Most of the other provinces in Atlantic Canada and most Eastern Canadian provinces already did that about a week ago. But such is the case that we saw a pretty dramatic increase, 7 cents a liter there. Diesel, as I expected, would drop about 3 or 4 cents a liter, which it did. But for the rest of Atlantic Canada, it won't be as grim. You already had that 7 cent increase. So you're likely to see about a 2 cent drop at the gas pumps for Nova Scotia, PEI, and for New Brunswick. And diesel should come down about 4 cents as well. Markets have really been shedding their position over the past week, mostly due to concerns that there isn't really if you will, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. And so the oil premium that we saw, oil going to 86 and 91 bucks a barrel for WTI and Brent, have now dropped about $4 or $5 a barrel. At the same time, we're back to where a lot of traders have been over the past year and a half, fretting the global economy and not seeing any relief anytime soon on interest rates, despite high demand surging well past anyone's expectations, and despite the fact that the U.S. economy is, relatively speaking, on a tear. So sooner or later, there's going to be a reconnoitering, and it is summer demand driving season right around the corner. The May 2-4 weekend, Memorial Day long weekend in the U.S. That's the unofficial kickoff. We could expect prices to stabilize and then move up right after that.
So, Dan, when you say stabilize and move up, I know that you and I have talked about that magical, or maybe not magical, $2 a liter threshold. We're right around it now, 185-ish here in Nova Scotia, depending on what part of the province you're in. Is it still looking likely that we're going to get close to that $2 threshold? I know it can be tough to tell with all the different factors, but again, your best guess or guesstimate as to how close we are to that $2 threshold.
Yeah, you're about 10 cents a liter away, and I think you're probably going to see that 10 cents reached by the May 2-4 weekend, maybe drop a little bit afterwards. But Newfoundland will, of course, break through 202, 204, probably around between May 24th and again around July the 1st. Remember, of course, we may also have some additional costs associated with the second carbon tax, the clean fuel standard. So that imposed by Ottawa, that could very well see another 3 or 4 cent increase by July the 1st. So all these things considered, $2 a liter is definitely in the cards. If it's not, then of course we are dealing with recession, and I don't see that yet playing out. I say prices are stabilizing because it's a very volatile period. Not only do we have, the switchover from winter to summer gasoline, carbon taxes added a couple of weeks ago, but we also have summer demand, and that is always a wild card. So is, for instance, the hurricanes in the U.S. Gulf Coast affecting the location where about 50% of all U.S. production is located on the Gulf Coast. We could see other events, refineries running into trouble, trying to keep up with demand. We're already starting to see this on the west coast of the United States, so that prices here in Atlantic Canada won't meet what they are tomorrow. For instance, if you happen to be in Vancouver, you're going to be paying about $2.18 for a liter of gasoline. So count your blessings, but there's a couple of differences. They have a clean fuel standard, which of course runs about 18, 19 cents a liter, and they also have TransLink, which is a subsidy for their public transportation system in Vancouver. So that's another 18, 19 cents a liter. Bottom line is that we are looking for much higher prices this year than last year, and it's going to be consistently like that. You and I have talked about this for some time. Make no mistake, it's going to be a very pricey year, not helped by what governments are doing.
Yeah, Dan, I filled up my car this morning, and it was a little disheartening, I'm not going to lie, to see the price racking up on the display, basically at double the amount that the liters are going up, where we are close to $2 a liter. It is what it is. Let's move on and talk about something else. I saw a post on X recently, and it was from a Heather Exner-Pirro, someone that I know that you're familiar with, and it's from a couple of days ago. But the post reads, heard last night that some residential and commercial customers in Atlantic Canada are switching from natural gas to oil, since the latter, being oil, is exempted from carbon taxes and is now cheaper despite being much higher emitting. And she finishes it off by saying predictable and frustrating. Dan, we talk about carbon taxes and what it's meant to do, but here in Atlantic Canada, if savvy consumers are going, wait a minute, it's now exempt from the carbon tax. It's actually cheaper for me to switch from this to using oil. It kind of defeats the purpose. Based on that post and your thoughts and knowledge of what's going on, what do you say to that? What is it? What do you make of that?
Well, if you think about it, the carbon tax alone on natural gas works out to 15 cents a cubic meter. Average home of 2,400 use a year. That's an extra $430. So if and it will continue to go much higher. The carve out the federal government gave, which exempts heating oil, may very well be an incentive for many people to say, hey, look, if this continues for 2 or 3 years, that 420 becomes 850 by 2030. I'd be better to, invest or fire up my old oil furnace. I probably still have the tank. Not sure if I have the heater, but that will save money. And I think it's a sign that many people are starting to say, we'll choose whichever option is the cheapest and the best for us. It really demonstrates the folly, not only of a carbon tax, but a carbon tax that is unevenly distributed. And it also suggests that adding and layering on and larding on more taxes in the form of clean fuel standards or output-based pricing system, which is what their industry is now having to be forced to pay. They have to pay a carbon tax as well. All this is suggesting that consumers are, really ducking for cover, running for refuge, doing what is best to protect their bottom line, while governments find ever more creative ways on the left, the Liberals and the NDP, to make life more arduous for Canadians. I think it's natural. It's expected, and I think Heather has it correct. It's frustrating, but this wasn't very well thought out. And when you start hammering people left and right, expect the backlash. And in ways I think most people are going to find very unpleasant. Hey, by the way, how's the heat pump sales going?
Always something interesting to talk about and follow, as is the next thing that we'll wrap up with you here on. And it's actually an article from SaltWire's own Aaron Beswick. And I'll just read you the title, first of all, and then a little bit from the article. And then again, I'll get you to weigh in, Dan, because you and I have talked about all the time, right? What's this going to cost? The transition, electrification, the greening. What is it going to cost consumers, Nova Scotians, Canadians? So the article from Aaron Beswick on saltwire.com. Still no estimate what greening Nova Scotia grid will cost ratepayers and taxpayers. And I'll just read you the first bit of the article. Getting off coal and hitting Nova Scotia's target of generating 80% of renewables by 2030 will be expensive for anyone who buys electricity or pays taxes here, that being Nova Scotia. Here's the little caveat. But nobody knows how expensive, Dan. This is from the article again. Neither Nova Scotia Power President Peter Gregg, Natural Resources Deputy Minister Karen Gayton, Clean Energy Executive Director Keith Collins, or Energy Project Lead David Miller could give MLAs an estimate of what this province's green energy transition is going to cost during testimony this past Tuesday at the Standing Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development. The article goes on to say more. Again, it's Aaron Beswick. You can see that on saltwire.com. But Dan, what do you make of all that? They can't even tell us what it's going to cost.
Well, it's a classic case of not looking before you leap. And as Jean Chrétien used to say, if there's not enough water in there, you might wind up with a broken neck. Look, it's good for those out there who are promoting all these wonderful ideas and the brave new world and the great just transition and the great reset. But what it's doing is it's imposing an unjust burden on Canadians and a great hardship on Canadians as well, trying to make ends meet. If you don't know where you're going, chances are you're going to wind up somewhere else, as Yogi Berra used to say. It strikes me as being very likely and predictable that we have experts and their political, advisors or vice versa, taking a position of let's just cast chance to the wind and see where this all winds up. I think what we have to now look at is reality is starting to bite heavily. A lot of these organizations and individuals pursuing something without any due regard to cost or consequence. Where I come from, it might be old school, but we called it publicly policy that's based on irresponsibility. And if people want to be irresponsible, well, then there's consequences in the next election for those. I think we'd be better to look at what the RBC has said, and many others, to electrify Canada, bring us to 80-90% electrification, which I think is fantasy. You're looking at a scenario where it's probably going to cost $2 to $3 trillion minimum, if we even have the resources, even if we have the skills, which we don't. We can't build homes. How the hell are we going to build out an electrical grid? Look, I'm driving my son's 2003 Chev Silverado. It's an old vehicle, 400,000 kilometers on it. There'll be no EVs lasting that long. And for that reason, you have to ask yourself, why do governments want to involve themselves in massive amounts of public expenditure? Most importantly, where do you come up with the 12 billion bucks for Honda today? 15 billion for for Stellantis, another 6, 7, 8 billion bucks for Northvolt. Where is this 60, 70 billion bucks going to come from? And when at the end of the day, we still have a country in which you're going to need fossil fuels, like it or not, for generations to come.
Dan, always great to be able to get your insights and expertise talking about these matters that consumers really want to know about. Now, I said that we'd ask where you are and what the heck you're doing in your car. We're going to wrap up with you here, Dan, but where exactly are you? It looks like you're on the side of the road somewhere there in Ontario.
Yeah, I'm here at an old manufacturer that closed down in Milton, Ontario. No doubt make way for homes or whatever, but I'm making my way up to Peterborough. I got some equipment I have to bring up, and I can't do that in the back of my little Ford Escape. So son lent me his vehicle, and I'm going to make my way up to Peterborough and hopefully be back by day's end.
And Dan, when folks can't find you and listen to you and watch you here with us on SaltWire, where can they catch up with you?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is always the fun one. You can catch me there at Gas Price Wizard. And of course, the gas site, gaswizard.ca, gives you the day ahead predictions for gasoline policy. And I'm going to have to get working on that this week more with what's happening. That would be president@affordableenergy.ca is my email, and affordableenergy.ca is, in fact, the website.
Dan, appreciate your time as always. Even when you got to pull off to the side of the road, you still make time for us here on Prices at the Pumps and SaltWire. Safe travels. Say a big hello to your mom, and have a great weekend ahead, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks so much, Scott. Good to be here in SaltWire with you again.
Take care now. Bye.